Mr. Christoph Hoerstel, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this interview.
Thank you very much. Best regards to Tehran.
Mr. Hoerstel, a number of top American senators have called for direct U.S. military intervention in Syria and arming the insurgents fighting the Syrian government. The American senators John McCain, Joseph Lieberman, and Lindsey Graham said that the U.S. should use its air force to protect areas controlled by the insurgents in Syria. What is your thought on that, Mr. Hoerstel? How do you evaluate the statements of the U.S. senators?
I think we are talking about a serious type of escalation. And on one side. On the other side, we must clearly say that the whole American society is in a deep split over how to treat this question. And in fact, this reflects in a way the deep split the U.S. society has about the case of Iran. We have, so to say, warmongers, on one side, people who want war at any cost and as soon as possible, and we have others who caution that this is not very wise, that this will be very costly, and that the side effects are unstudied and unsecure, and that the consequences will be possibly disastrous for the whole region, let alone the economic situation due to energy resources crisis. All kinds of arguments are there, and the fact that we have right now at a very high point in the U.S. Presidential election campaign such a discussion in the U.S. that casts a very bad shadow on what is happening, in fact, in the U.S. It doesn't say that much on the region. We know there's an aggression led by the U.S. going on against Syria, which is in fact directed against Iran. And there's little news, and the idea is to, use troops from the American side, even without United Nations mandate. That is long being discussed up to the rank of the U.S. United Nations ambassador, Mrs. Rice.
Mr. Hoerstel, the foreign-backed insurgents in Syria comprise of extremist elements, including Al-Qaeda militants. A German intelligence report estimates that around 90% of the terror attacks in Syria are carried out by Al-Qaeda affiliates. The U.S. attacked Afghanistan in order to fight Al-Qaeda, but how is it that the U.S. is helping and arming terror squads in Syria, especially Al-Qaeda, to terrorize people?
Many people in the NATO countries have serious doubts whether the official version of what was being told them by the mainstream media on the Afghan issue and on the anti-terror war is correct. And from my personal experience, I can tell you nobody in the NATO establishment believe anything that is being printed on this matter in their own bloody media. So what we can say is this: we have a situation where the U.S. and the NATO allies are so damn sure of themselves and of the success of their policies that they do not even bother to hide the fact that they are in collaboration with Al-Qaeda. So that in some of the critical media in the West, they call this not Al-Qaeda but Al-CIA-da. So that has a little name game here, and that is unfortunately something we have to face. I can tell you from my own personal experience, I have been for years exposing this double game, and I went so far as going to an important department head inside the Chancellor's office in Berlin. And the nice guy, by person, I don't want to disclose even the sex of the person, told me that yes, there was a double game going on comprising not only Al-CIA but also the Taliban.
Syria has been experiencing unrest since March 2011. Damascus says outlaws, saboteurs and insurgents are the driving factor behind the unrest and deadly violence. while the opposition accuses the security forces of killing protesters. How do you explain the role of foreign countries, especially the United States, in escalation of violence and intensification of unrest in Syria? And what goals is the U.S. following by continuation of interventionism policies in Syria?
Let me first state very clearly that the U.S. and allies, both regional and within NATO, have since 2009 deployed personnel with Secret Service background in the region, I can only say, not only in Turkey or in Jordan or in Lebanon, all these countries, including Tunisia, to prepare for the attempts on Libya and things like that. They have long-standing efforts for educating, training special personnel of agents capable of doing military jobs. And this has culminated in the so-called, Arab Spring, which to my best checking is, of course something people hope for. Wherever people live, they hope for peace and freedom and just government and, fair treatment by the government to the ordinary citizen. This is a dream all over the world. So what these, efforts led by the U.S., coordinated by the U.S., instigated by the U.S., have, of course, exploited is a weakness in all these issues. There's corruption in all these countries. There's, of course, oppression in all these countries, and there's, a leadership which has little, legitimation. And this was exploited by the U.S., and they have put their personnel in, and that is the story we face. And in the case of Syria, of course, a lot of, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, bases in Jordan, northern Lebanon has become, so to say, a camp for the so-called Free Syrian Army, and they are all, again, exploiting things which are unhappy in Syria, and that is a huge and rampant corruption. We have, of course, had oppression in the country and lack of legitimation for the leadership. That is very clear. But we also have very exciting steps of reform. We have a constitutional referendum. We had elections. However, one may feel that this was not the full step one would have wished for, but it's a huge step ahead. And under these circumstances, usually if there was not a double standard, the Western press would have been jubilant about it. But, of course, we have to face the case